Welcome back to another video. Less than 12 hours later, here I am back again. Today, we're going to talk about specifically how to be wrong, right? How to learn how to be wrong and why it's helpful. Now, the fact that we don't want to be wrong, that we don't like to be wrong, is normal. Everybody experiences that. You do, I do. Scientists experience that. People in the public sphere experience that. Politicians experience that. The reason we don't want to be wrong is we don't want to lose face. We care about the opinions of other people. It's basically pride. People call it ego. You can call it ego if you want, but it's basically you have pride. You want to stand by your position because you know that if you were mistaken or if you made a mistake and other people know it, then you feel less secure within yourself. So it's also an insecurity thing. It's a pride thing. It's an insecurity thing. It's a self-image thing, right? So the question is, well, what do you do about it? So first of all, when I say being wrong, I mean like if you wronged somebody and you know that you did, I'm not talking about that where you like apologize, you kind of admit your error. That's kind of like a normal occurrence that people experience. Now, what I'm talking about specifically is being wrong in specific worldviews that you had that have been proven to you to be false, or perspectives that you have, or maybe like a life that you thought you were going to live that you didn't live. And I told you I went through this personally myself with my music. And I don't think I told this story, but so I was producing music for close to 10 years. And I sucked at first, but like eventually, obviously, you become better as you continue to produce. Now, the issue that I had is that I did not do any marketing whatsoever. I didn't do any social media because I was very averse to doing social media. And all I did was like make music. I would just create music. And in the meantime, like I would be working, but I wouldn't be making money from making music. And then eventually, I remember one night where I was like, I was just getting, I was transitioning, out of a job that I had, and I was thinking, I'm gonna make this happen. Like this is gonna happen. And again, in my mind, I'm like, this is gonna happen. And I was listening to one of my songs, one of my tracks, and admittedly, if I look back in retrospect, it's for some reason just being very inconsistent with my productions. This was one of like my not, it felt like a production I had made 2 years into my producing career, not at year whatever I was at, 8 or 9 or whatever. So I was listening to this and I'm like, oh my God, I'm not even, I'm not 80% there. I thought I was like 80, 90% there. I'm not 80, 90% there. It sounds like I'm 50% there. And at the time when I was listening, it's almost like my brain kind of melted. And I had this epiphany, this realization that what I thought would be possible at that moment would not be possible. And if I were to do it, it would take a long period of time. But then I also realized because I didn't do any of the legwork, I didn't do any of the front end work, I would still have to not only become a better producer, but also do like have like a social media presence, have like a presence where and then actually post my music. You know what I mean? Like I was posting here and there, but it wasn't anything consistent, it wasn't anything serious. I wasn't really creating like album art. I wasn't really putting effort into it. And I realized that for me, it was more of like a hobby. I just really like to be creative, but it didn't seem like I wanted to do this professionally. And I talked about this in a previous video. As far as me having the idea of being like a DJ or like a traveling musician was actually more of an ego thing. It was more of the fact that I wanted like some kind of like adulation, applause, appreciation. But truly, what I truly wanted on a more substantial level, that was the superficial level. At the more substantial level was just to be creative. Like I would have been happier actually just being in the studio alone by myself, just making music or like with another producer, right? So keep that in mind, right? When I was wrong in that moment, I didn't have to admit it to anybody. I didn't have to like tell anybody that. And it was more of like a self-realization, and it's painful. And the reason we don't want to be wrong is because it's painful, because who we thought we were and what we thought was true, in fact, is not who we are, and in fact was not true. So we have to basically reframe our entire perspective. It's like a survival thing. So we spent all this time, building this construct, this like conceptual thing internally, our identity, if you will. And once a piece of that is jeopardized, we don't want to let go of it because it's more painful. It's like a little mini death, right? It's like a little death inside. It's a psychological death. It's like a spiritual. It's almost like a mental death, right? It's psychological death. Death is more accurate. Even spiritual death, because what happens is once something dies, it no longer exists. Like just imagine you not existing, or imagine one of your loved ones not existing, or imagine like a part of you not existing, even one of your limbs, right? It feels like that, right? And we want to avoid that at all costs. But the reason I want to record this video is just because the moments that I've had the most breakthroughs in my life, the most insights, the most epiphanies are the moments where I've had those experiences, where I've had the experiences of who I thought I was and what I thought was true is indeed not who I am and is not true. And this is kind of, again, dark night of the soul, right? You're there, you're confused, you're lost, you're in pain, right? You're suffering. And all you can do is just try to make sense of things. But that's exactly what you're going to do, right? You have no other option because you're trying to move forward, right? You want to be able to survive. So in order for you to survive, once you know that something has died, and if you allow it to die, then whatever constituent parts, components that have basically died will be reformulated, will be reconfigured and grow into something else, right? Remember, energy can't be created or destroyed. It can only change forms. So basically, you're allowing yourself to change form. You're transforming, right? That's the whole part of transformation. Transformation is just like, it's not all, oh, I'm looking this way and look at me, I'm transforming. No, you're gonna go through periods of just deep chaos, despair, confusion. I recorded that in my, there was like a 45-minute video as far as how I went from 0 to 6 figures, multiple 6 figures in less than 2 years. And then there I share my story about like how I went completely broke. I was homeless. I was sleeping in my car. And before that, I was like in the cheapest motel room. And it was just bad, man. It was bad all around. But that was almost required for me to be able to reformulate new thoughts. So I'm just here to like kind of like reframe, like shift your thinking around being wrong. And the reason most people and we don't want to be wrong is because we don't want to be wrong in the face of other people. We don't want other people to have like the satisfaction of knowing that they were right. That's why in that moment that I described with me in the music thing, it's like I didn't I wasn't concerned about other people's opinions. Like there were people that knew that I made music, but they never really knew that this is something that I maybe intended to do professionally at a large scale, et cetera, et cetera. So especially if you put yourself out there and you're wrong, it can be damaging. That's why I always say at the end of the videos, that if you disagree with me on something, right? If you think that it's something that I missed, then let me know so we can actually talk about it. I don't pretend like I have all the answers, right? I have my own experience and I've done a lot with that experience. And I'm here to like impart that onto you and to like teach you how to use all the tools that you have within you and to basically release all of your gifts and to take everything and to organize it so you can actually be effective in your life to create the type of life that you want to create, not only financially, but also with your relationships, with your family, with your community involvement, with whatever it is that you want to do in the future, with your body, right? With your mental health, everything being aligned. And one thing that's going to hold you back, and one thing that has held me back in the past, is not accepting the fact that I was wrong, right? The fact that you're wrong. Like, listen, if you're wrong about something, you're like, yeah, I'm sorry, bro. Like, I was wrong about that. Like, if you can't say I'm sorry to somebody, then we got to talk about it. Like, those are more serious issues. Like, if you can't even apologize to somebody that you've wronged. Now, of course, like you may be in a toxic relationship with like a narcissist or some kind of like a person with like a personality disorder, and you're being gaslit, and so you're like, why am I apologizing? If that's the case, then again, different video, different time, different story. But in normal circumstances, right? Normal people are able to like apologize to one another when they're wrong, or when they feel like they've done the other person wrong, right? Put it that way. But the reason, typically speaking, that we don't want to be wrong, especially about like important things, is because we don't want, like, we have that attachment to the identity. We want to keep that alive because it feels like a death if we let it go. And also, it's the insecurity that we have in the face of revealing our vulnerability to other people. Because now, not only are we weaker temporarily, but really that weakness is going to be eventually transformed into a strength. But we're weaker temporarily, and we've kind of been exposed to other people's criticism or to their laughter. You know what I mean? Or if people are kind of, they can be cruel sometimes, right? And but again, typically these are ideas that we have, and we have to be able to separate those those emotions that other people have, those perspectives, those opinions, from the opinions that we have, the thoughts that we have, the beliefs that we have about ourselves and where we're going. Right? Those are two separate things. But because we're social beings, it's easy to like get wrapped up into somebody else's view of you and who you are and what you should do. So again, normal experience, don't think it's abnormal, but remember that at the end of the day, the person that you have to answer to is yourself. Right? You're going to have moments where you're not going to be around other people. You're going to be alone. You're going to have to rely on yourself. And so if you're going to be in moments, no matter where you are and what you're doing, you're relying on yourself as long as you're alive, then you have to know that the, the, the only person's opinion, human being's opinion, that actually matters about you is your own. That is it. That's why I always advocate for positive self-talk, for not judging yourself, for being compassionate. Because once you can do that, then you're basically negating, you're neutralizing other people's opinions because they're actually irrelevant. Because you know that if you internalize their dialogue, if you internalize their perspective, then you would crush yourself, right? You would crush yourself under your own pressure. You would sabotage your own mental, psychological well-being, and that would actually sabotage your well-being financially, your well-being physically, your well-being in your relationships, and it has a downstream effect, right? That's why it's important to internalize the self-talk, right? Like I talk about in my other videos, you have to basically construct not routines, but you have to construct frameworks, formats that you can actually use so that you can relate to yourself in a very healthy way and be able to internalize to such a degree where you're not relying on somebody else's opinion of you. Because all the dialogue that we had in our minds, especially if it's unconscious, it was ingrained in us, it was conditioned within us when we were kids, from our caregivers, from our teachers, from our peers. And now we're just kind of like running this script, running this dialogue, running this story, and we think that that's who we are. So whenever somebody says something, we immediately want to fight back against it or shy away from it and like protect whatever weaknesses that we have that need to be destroyed so we can rebuild them into strengths. Why? Because we just don't want that dialogue to be internalized, right? Because if we're wrong and people's criticisms come to the fore, and then we start to receive everybody's, or what we believe people's thoughts are of us, then we think that because we've been conditioned to internalize the dialogue, that is the same dialogue that we're going to internalize now within us. And the reason we think that is because we haven't taken the initiative to actually create our own relationship with ourselves, our own dialogue with ourselves. So once you start doing that, and once you start to understand all of these elements that I'm describing, it'll be a lot easier for you to accept um, accept something that needs to accept that you need to let go of something internally, psychologically, typically, that's going to allow you to take the constituent parts after things collapse, allow yourself to like fall into confusion for some period of time, so that way you can reformulate things and make your life better. That's the only way it's going to happen. You can't keep stacking falsities upon falsities, superficialities upon superficialities, right? So I hope that was helpful. This is kind of like a more of a like a wake up call type of video. but maybe you found some tools in there that were useful. So I'm gonna upload this. If you have any comments, if you want to add anything to what I said, if you have a question, if you disagreed with me, like I normally say, please let me know. In the meantime, if you like the video, make sure you actually like the video, subscribe to the channel, subscribe to my newsletter because I publish articles there on a regular basis. And that's it. Until next time, I'll see you soon.